Can you hear us, Brian?
I can.
Just 1 minute, we're missing one.
I don't think she'll be face, but you can, except I think she's on the they told me to work on it as usual. It's popping up and I can't, I mean.
Okay, I think we're ready, Brian.
Okay. Go ahead and call the meeting to order. Would all who wish stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I have 3 proposed agenda adjustments, adding item 6B, student board report, removing 8.A.I.1, ACE special ed teacher appointment, and adding item 8.D, approved new school nurse subrate. Is there a second?
Second.
Any other agenda adjustments? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Mark. Sorry, I skipped Noah.
Aye.
Noah. All right, I
Aye.
heard Mark, and I also vote aye. Sorry, my fault. Passes 5-0. Next up are the minutes. I would make a motion to approve the minutes as presented for September 10th. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion or corrections? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Carries 5-0. I would make a motion to approve regular warrant 6, payroll warrant 6, and main purse warrant for August 2024. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Aye.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Carries 5-0. This time we are open for public comment. Is there anybody who would like to make a public comment? We should probably mute that. Unless they're trying to.
Anyone trying to make a public comment?
Seeing no public comment, we'll go ahead. And we have acknowledgements. Jake,
Nothing at this time.
Kevin,
It's coming to me, hold on. Yes, I'd
Take your
like
time.
to thank sorry, I'm always a little slow. I'd like to thank the principals and teachers and staff at Asa Adams for a delightful open house that happened last week. And it was great opportunities for community members to get together. Kids are running around outside, meeting teachers. Also, the LAMP instructors, along with Maddie and Carrie, did nice informational sections for families, or informational sessions, not sections, for families. That was very helpful. So thanks, that went really well.
Noah, anything?
This second that.
Okay, Mark?
Nothing at this time, thank you.
I don't think I have anything. Meredith?
I just want to acknowledge Derek for all of his work with lots of projects right now, including seeing the portable through to its exit. We are
Hooray!
acknowledging and happy for the years of service it provided, but happy it's gone.
Great. Now we'll move on to director
Students.
reports.
The students.
In the agenda, it's after the directors as students.
I know, but for acknowledgements.
Oh, for acknowledgements. Students, do you have acknowledgements? Sometimes you just throw them in the report, so jump in if you have acknowledgements now.
Yeah, I would just like to acknowledge, Ms. Clark and the OHS Student Council for all the hard work they've been putting into planning homecoming.
Great, thanks. Okay, so any other acknowledgements I missed? We'll go ahead and move on to director reports. Lisa.
Yes, good evening, everybody. We've been really busy in our office. We are processing through referrals that were put in at the end of the year last year and trying to get those completed as quickly as possible. We're currently fully staffed, which is a pretty quick turnaround since my last report when I had several openings and by surprise at the beginning of the year. Our numbers are rapidly increasing. We have 17 new students. That's not including our tuition students. It's caused us, to consider requests from tuition students a little bit more carefully because consider we have the staff to we've moved around staff to cover unanticipated needs, and we're still, hoping that our gaps will be filled. Next week, I'm meeting with Amy Sear from RSU 34. RSU 34 is involved with a program with the Department of Labor that helps to train educational technicians. And RSU 34 is currently a regional hub for this work. And I've heard about this and finally actually was able to get a contact from Susan here. And what they do is they provide training for EdTech 1s to get to an EdTech 2 level, EdTech 2s to get to an EdTech 3 level, EdTech 3s to potentially move on to become certified special education teachers. We've kind of been supporting that ourselves, kind of in a homegrown route. I've been sending EdTech 1s and 2s to EMCC, which had a free program that we take a cohort couple times a year that we're actually working, and that time in the school would give them credit towards earning that higher certification. But they can only take so many people. So I'm looking forward to hearing how they're doing this in RSU 34 so we can bring this to our team. And it's like a paid the teachers, the edtechs are working, getting paid, and they're getting credits at the same time, so it's a win-win. Moving on to our multilingual learners, this is just a explosive area for us this year. Currently, we have 22 active students pre-K to grade 12. We've got 9 languages. We have 20 students that we have not screened yet. I say that, but I spoke to Eric today and another family's moved in with 2 or 3 more students. And we've heard of other families moving in, so the need is great. We're very happy that we were able to get approval for an ed tech. We interviewed a couple applicants tomorrow, so hoping to fill that need pretty quickly. We're also working to provide PD to support teachers. There's so much other work in the background that Eric has to complete that it takes away some of his time working with students. So it's been hard to connect with teachers, and teachers are reaching out saying, I have a student that speaks no English, what do I do? So working on PD to get people off the ground a little bit more quickly. We've contracted with Green Linguistics for translation and transcription services. We've already used that. Really, I think it's gonna be a great way to communicate, especially with families, with parents, just to help them understand who we are here at RSU 26 and what they have available to them. The next area is our nursing area. We are seeking a long-term sub. We have our nurses going to have surgery and will be out for, I believe, 12 weeks. So that is going to be a pretty significant amount of time and position to fill. So we're looking at, various ways of filling that at this time. But hopefully there'll be more to come. Hopefully by 2 weeks down the road, we'll have a lot more information on that. That's it for me. If anybody has any questions.
Any questions? Lisa, it's probably too early, but do we have any sense with the multi-language learners? Is this an increase in done, or do we think this is going to be an even bigger increase next year? Just trying to get a handle. In other
Yeah,
words,
I think it's gonna be constant all year, honestly. And, you know, we're speaking regionally, it's probably gonna come to the superintendents about, you know, maybe a way to support our MLL teachers by providing staff as a regional position to do some of the, logistical paperwork. So it's growing, it's gonna continue to grow. I don't see it reducing or leveling it out anytime soon.
thanks. Any other questions? We'll go ahead to Susan, Director of Learning.
So my computer is not liking Zoom right now, so I'm gonna borrow Lisa's. Thank you, so at least you can see that there is a person here talking, I appreciate that. Thanks, Lisa. So I know that our health curriculum is on the agenda a couple other times, so I won't share about that here. But our curriculum plan for this year is pretty intensive, and we're excited about that work starting and continuing and moving forward. NWEA and the 3-year test. It's a little complicated and confusing as we sort our way through spring scores and help get those out to parents and students as well, while we're getting ready to do the fall assessment. So lots of people have been working in the background on both of those parts. I don't know if board members might have some wonders and some questions about the rescoring of the students' spring scores that the NWA and the Maine State went through that process at the very end of this summer and found that the scores really weren't where they expected them to be, and so they recalculated, and that did increase students' RIT scores, but didn't have an impact on the state scores. That's that. And then I'm really pleased with the online safety and digital citizenship lessons that were piloted last year and organized by the folks on the tech committee, and are now available for our teachers to start using with our students. So all students from kindergarten all the way up to grade 12 will have a nice sequential set of lessons about being safe online digital citizens. And I think it's really a high point and a need, and people appreciated the resources and also that structure with some of the timing flexibility. There are some teachers that really wanted to do some of the lessons early in the school year because they felt kids needed those earlier rather than later. So as long as they're not, you know, waiting and doing everything at the end of the school year, we definitely said, yes, there could be flexibility in providing those lessons to the students earlier. And not in my report, but also coming up is October 11th, just a few weeks away, is our district-wide professional development day, and we'll be digging into our strategic plan, having lots of mini U sessions related to that strategic plan, and then having some school-based time for schools to work on things that are really specific needs of the district, but also needs to be tailored to the school, like our supervision and evaluation group updates and SSPs, student success plans, literacy work at ASA. So shaping up to be, I think, a really productive day for folks.
Great. Any questions? No? Okay, thank you. Student report.
Right, for school culture, we like to start with, you know, warm welcome to the new OHS freshman class.
Jostin is having a back to school sale. Yearbooks are $50 until October 25th.
Senior Sunrise was last Saturday, September 21st. Thank you to the senior class officers and advisors who worked hard to make this happen.
Student council is working hard at preparing for homecoming week next month.
Class officer elections took place. Congrats to all those elected.
Say Something anonymous reporting system training happened for all students, grades 10, 11, 12 was yesterday.
For academics, SAT retakes are coming up on October 5th and October 17th.
The PSAT is approaching for the junior class.
Early college courses have started.
The first extra and co-curricular grade checks are next Friday, September the 13th.
The last day to drop your main classes is October 4th.
Colby College rep came to Orno High School to talk to students during win-win.
NOEA test day is coming up soon.
Seventh grade has some very exciting field trips coming up this month to the Rogers Farm in the Bog Walk.
The college fairs, there was a college fair for all the juniors. Many colleges were there to represent, ranging from MIT to UML.
Parent-teacher conferences are next Monday.
As for activities, sports have been gearing up for the middle school and the high school.
Football won their game against Dexter recently.
Auditions for the joint OMS OHS production of Shrek Musical were a few weeks ago. Congratulations to all those who auditioned.
OHS Jazz Band auditions are later this month.
OMS Robotics Club has started a couple weeks ago.
OMS Art Club meets every Tuesday after school.
OHS girls volleyball team at their first match against MDI. They put up a very good fight.
OHS boys soccer beat Old Town.
And OHS boys soccer was playing GSA today. We were there, not sure what the outcome was of that game.
When we left, it was 2-4 with GSA. There have been, some of the tennis team players have raised concerns about the new pickleball lines on the tennis courts, because they've reported that they're slippery when stepped on and a different material than the rest of the court, which could have some negative implications. And they say that the color choice isn't the most appealing because it's at times difficult to call lines and differentiate between the two different types of lines as well as the court.
And that's for our report.
Thank you. Any questions from the other board members?
Probably just, I can address the pickleball response. We're aware of the concerns and working on some solutions for that. The slippery was just, we just heard about that today, or I just heard about that today. But the way it was painted was not the way we had hoped, and the vendor came back in and is doing some other corrections, although we're still problem solving some of the issues, so to be continued.
Right.
Seeing nothing else, we'll go ahead and move on to the superintendent report.
Three things that I have to share with you. The legislative workshop was last Friday that usually Brian and I go to every year. This was the most unusual legislative conference I've ever been to, in that I don't think there's a single policy change that came out of this conference for us, which is highly unusual. But it's really reflective of the legislative session was for any legislation that affected education. It really wasn't policy related. It was either to appoint a study committee or to direct the Department of Education to include a new element in required curriculum, or about business practices with schools, or about how things are funded. So it was very unusual in that regard. Usually Brian and I come back with a list of, I don't know, on a light year, 5 to 10, on a heavy year, more than that, of policy changes. So, but I wanted to highlight two things that it really were kind of updates for us at the meeting, or reminders about one and update on the other. The reminder was about the new minimum wage legislation that went into effect, affecting schools, or will go into effect beginning June 30th, 2025. And that's that ed techs must be paid 125% of state minimum wage, and other school support staff must be paid 115% of state minimum wage. So we've looked at our salary scales. We will have to adjust our ed tech 1 step 0 for the start of the 25 year, 26 year. It feels strange to say out loud, the year 25, 26. And every year after that, then when minimum wage adjusts, this will be applied to it. So that's, we heard about that. I can't remember if we talked about it in this forum. We certainly talked about it a little bit at negotiations. It was kind of in process going through the legislature when we were negotiating, but that's the final, kind of where that landed. That was LD 2214, and again, it goes into effect June 30 of 2025. The other, probably, we spent a couple of hours on this topic, and it's really not final yet how it's going to roll out, is the main paid family medical leave. It's a new bucket, basically, of family medical leave that's statewide across all industries. So it'll be like a payroll tax that, you know, employers pay, employees pay into this fund that employees can apply for benefits under. So it'll work kind of like it's not something that an employee would apply to us for. They would make application to the state for these benefits. And currently there's some, they're in rulemaking process, and they're kind of in the final stages of that. So we took a look at where the current rulemaking is around this new law. And it's just pretty complicated how it, you know, there's federal family medical leave, there's state family medical leave, and now there's Maine paid family medical leave, and these are all three different types of medical leave. And how those are alike and different, and how they work are different. And so it's something that once the final rules are put into place, we'll have to figure out how to help employees understand what, you know, what this is and how it intersects with other types of leave. So we're aware of it, we're watching it. Sue's been to some training on it, but again, the rulemaking is still in progress. And if you're interested, I can point you to where it stands right now, but there's some definitely different nuances to this compared to the other family medical leaves. So, you know, we covered other topics, but again, there's no policy. They're just a variety of other topics, that some of which we do need to do some things in response to. And so I've tagged those to talk with different staff members about either making adjustments or implementing something. But then there's a whole nother set that are just kind of informational for us to know that things are changing at the Department of Ed, or there's a study on different topics. So Brian, it was a good one to miss, I would say, because it was very unusual. Any questions? Oh, wait, no. The other thing I wanted to mention that was mentioned in this, that's a study that's being done, is a study on EPS, the essential programs and services, basically the funding model for the state. So the legislature passed a resolve in their session last spring to have MEPRI, which is the Maine Educational Policy Research Institute, to study EPS. And they directed them to study certain aspects of EPS. And part of what they're doing as in the study is having some listening sessions, and they're actually this week via Zoom. I forwarded that to Brian and Lynn. I participated in one at Penquist superintendent meeting last week. So if you're interested, I can share that. It's also on the Department of Education website. And they're basically asking for some feedback around very specific areas. It was pretty clear to me, though, that there are areas out of bounds for this that are not part of the realm of the study. But they listened nonetheless to very spirited feedback at the superintendent's meeting I was a part of. But the general frames that they offered that they're collecting information on are looking at the changes of the educational cost landscape compared to when EPS was developed in the early 2000s. A lot has changed, right? Looking at the structures around ability to pay, sustainability around subsidy, property valuations, looking at special education and how that specifically is funded and how that's working, looking at regional cost variations and how that maybe is working or not working in the formula. And then just a miscellaneous few other things like They list gifted and talented cost models, review of some of the subsidy adjustments. There's a sheet called the purple sheet that kind of lists a lot of adjustments that are happening, like CTE is funded through the purple sheet and different projects through the purple sheet. And then looking at minimum receiver districts, which we are not one of those, thankfully. So if you're interested in providing feedback, I know this is something that, you know, Brian's really passionate about, and I shared thoughts at the meeting last week. But it'll be, what they said is basically this report has to be delivered to the legislature for their next session for them to consider. So it definitely will not impact next year's, you know, funding, because funding comes out before the legislative session meets next. So they'll get this report and then the legislature will decide if they feel like changes need to be made based on that. So that was one of those resolves that was passed last year that really, you know, we have the opportunity for them, but there's no change yet. Any questions about the legislative update?
Meredith, I don't know what you're hearing, but one of the biggest political energy I've been hearing behind that EPS push is the notion that it should all be based on property valuations. Places like Deer Isle feel like they have very high property valuations in a community with very low salaries. And so they're trying to get what they would perceive as equitability around that cost model. That's the biggest push I've heard from other school boards and politicians. Have you been hearing other? I mean, I'm sure they're in a listening mode, but I'm sure there were some specific agendas that caused this committee to be formed. Have you heard any other big pushes?
Well, I think, you know, the idea of what's changed about education and is the formula responsive to that? Like thinking about, you know, mental health needs and MLL and, you know, programming needs that really were not where they are today when it was developed in early 2000s. So that was definitely a part of it. But I think this property valuation, ability to pay it's one of the 5 prongs. They gave this handout about the 5 things they're looking at, and it's one of the 5 things. Special ed is another one of the 5 things. So, you know, in the room that I was in, that was a little bit of the discussion, but we were really, you know, focusing on some other things. But, you know, for the most part, I think, it's going to come down to probably property valuation, special ed, and maybe looking at, you know, some of the big educational kind of changes that have happened over the last 20 years that the formula maybe needs to be more responsive around. But, you know, I would encourage anyone that's interested to attend a listening session. They're, I think, an hour. I can't remember. And they're via Zoom, and they're kind of all different times of day.
Yeah, I think
Segueing to my next one, they're also going to be at the MSMA conference. So if you attend the MSMA conference, you can go to a listening session there. But any questions about this? Okay, so I put the dates for the MSMA conference on the agenda. They haven't posted registration quite yet, or the schedule of sessions. When I get that, I will send it out. But if you can, you know, for now, if you think you might be interested, those are the dates. If you can pencil them into your calendar and work around. Also, you know, sometimes some years we would strategically go for, like Brian often went for one day, not both days, just depending on the schedule. So that's also a possibility, if you can make one day work. Usually, day one, there is a morning keynote, and there is this year, and then half a morning, and then the afternoon are sessions, like, you know, usually 5 or 6 options per time slot. And day 2 is, I think, all just individual session options. So I will let you know. I'll send information out when I get more details. The last thing I wanted to just spend some time talking about is their strategic plan draft. Rachel and I, mainly Rachel, has been working really, you know, diligently on this plan. I think it looks quite different than it does the last time I saw it. But I have two things to share with you today. First, this is the draft as it stands, and Rachel and I are at the point where we need to stop looking at this and have some other people look at it and give us kind of some final feedback, because we're kind of at that stage where we feel like the content is mostly set and looking for, you know, that refine kind of eye and feedback. But also we had talked about in this meeting, bringing back to you kind of options for dissemination. And I have some kind of 3 different options to share with you. So I was able to get information from our 5 sending communities. I got their 5th through 8th grade enrollment, and for all but 1 mailing addresses. And the one that wouldn't give me mailing addresses says they would be happy to send it home with their students if we provide it to them. So the options that I have for you include that group, plus the first option is all of our RSU 26 families, households, plus the 5 primary sending towns, 5th through 8th grade households. And that would be 936 publications with a total cost of, if we printed them and mailed them, except for the one school we just give them to them, is just under $1,100 to do that. So we would mail this publication to the 543 RSU 26 families, because avoiding duplication, like if we take out duplicate family households, we have 543 households of student families, and then 393 families for the 5th through 8th graders in our 5 sending towns. So that's $1,100. If we did that and added a kind of front and back color insert into the next Orono Observer that went out to all the community in lieu of sending the publication to all Orono residences, that adds another 1,900, almost like 1967 is that cost to put a 2-page mailing in the Orono Observer that would have the benefit of going to, I think it's 3,000 and something households. That's every Orono residence. So those 2 costs together could be one option for us, or, you know, we could just do RSU 26 families and the 5th through 8th grade families for 1,100, or we could do that and add in the Orono Observer for another 1,967. Option 3 is really to send the full glossy pamphlet to all Orono households and the 5 sending town 5th through 8th grade families, and not do the Orono Observer 2-page condensed, you know, version. That option would cost $4,870.
Is that 4,000 month?
$4,870. So I offer you those options to consider. And I can tell you that, you know, there was a time, I think my first year here, the high school did a Orono-wide publication they mailed to all households. I think once a year they did that. The high school publications class would do it after the yearbook deadline was met, and they would create this glossy pamphlet that was really high school centric, I think. I think it was a high school publication. And so that's something historically that the Orono community has received, but hasn't in some time. Noah has a question.
Yeah. Well, I guess I wanna ask too, like. So sort of coming off the last workshop conversation we had, but like, so this. you know, we talked about, if this is like there's a lot of information in here. And it's like providing content to a lot of users. And, I guess I'm thinking about like a marketing thing as something separate potentially. And are we still thinking about developing more of a sort of marketing version of this to send out for recruiting? Or is this, you know, I'm just asking?
I think what we just had in a conversation in the workshop would, I mean, maybe it intersects with this, maybe we add something in this. But I guess I was envisioning that this is kind of sharing this with folks, and then we follow on with, you know, other messages that, you know, depending on the group that we're trying to target, you know, messages that carry this forward, but have some of the resonating
Okay.
selected messages.
Yeah, cause like in terms of like marketing, or if the purpose of mailing to sending towns and is really to like, yeah, this is not the kind of eye candy that's gonna like bring that in, I feel like. But,
I would, sorry, go ahead and finish.
yeah, I know, so I think that this is really compelling. And I think that I would like to also save room for, in the budget, for having that too, as we're thinking this thing is kind of what I'm thinking. But, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with the both and perspective. I think there's a marketing follow on, but I also think, especially with the work Rachel and Meredith have done, this has taken a significant step to being more of a hybrid piece of marketing already. Right, with the data information, the facts, fast facts about our schools, the pictures. I think it's clearly got a strategic plan communication flavor, but it's clearly got a marketing flavor too. So I don't think that preempts doing some more marketing down the road, but just to kind of cut to the chase on Meredith's question, I personally think, if I understood, it's about $3,000 to do, you know, parents and students, and two-pager to the community, or $4,800 to do the full brochure to the community and parents and students. And I think it's worth going ahead and doing it at that level. I think take this brochure and you cut it back down to 2 pages, and a lot of the marketing pieces are cut out of it, and it's back to just a strategic plan. So I personally would favor sending this thing to everybody.
As do I. I mean, it's only really the difference between 4870 and 1100, so $3,700 difference.
Well, but it's less than that with the Orno Observer piece. Right, with the Orno Observer piece, it's about $1,800 difference,
Even better.
yeah.
I prefer option 3.
Wait, which one was option
Yeah,
3?
it's like-
And mailing it to all
Yeah.
Orno residences
okay.
and
But the full thing.
the full thing.
Yeah.
And the 5 through 8 families in our 5 sending towns.
I have no opposition.
You sound like it.
Yeah,
Well, I think one of the things it does is it, you know, shares with the community at large, like an important update on what we're about, what we're doing, what we stand for, you know, the things that we are prioritizing as a district.
Yeah.
And I think that it's an important way to kind of reset maybe folks' understanding of that, if they've lost touch with that, if they haven't had kids in our school, and maybe they just read those, you know, the Orno Observer article that I write every quarter, and that's about it. And so I think it's worth the investment to do that. And there's some people that it'll be too dense for, and they may, you know, not get past the first couple of pages, but we designed it so that if you really just read the first few pages, you've gotten a flavor of who we are and what we are at our core. And you might not get to the back half, but you've read the parts that we really hope everyone will read, so. That's kind of the design thinking on the order and structure of this.
That's one of the things I was gonna say, because I remember we were specifically discussing how to orient this in a more marketing strategy. And we were talking about how having like bigger headlines and more graphics, and that was like gets progressively more in detail further you go, would probably be beneficial. And I think that this is like very digestible for a larger audience. If you just look at like the big red words, like on this page, it's courageous, globally aware, thriving and empowered. And someone can see that that's what we try to encourage. And then there's also further details about each of those. So I think that this is fairly oriented in a marketing sense, and I think it would still be effective.
Ask an unrelated question. Are there more power cords in that blue bag?
Yes. Okay, I'm hearing good consensus around the dissemination plan. I mean, if you have small detail feedback, please, mark up your copy and give it back to Rachel. But kind of big picture, are there any big picture kind of elements that you think we should discuss as a group around how this is put together?
Yeah, I guess I'm not like the graph, just the bar graphs. Make I'm not sure those are the most, I mean, what we're trying to say with them.
Well, I mean, we had a lot of graphs to begin with
Yeah,
that we were considering. And we shifted to change a lot of things that we were depicting visually with graphs, because we just felt like it was not very digestible with so many graph looking pages, to the schools page at the front, and just put a lot of kind of quick facts at the front. But we felt like it was important to give folks who are interested and want some of those basic kind of comparative markers of district performance for folks to have. And that's what those graphs are about. And we really, prioritize the ones that we felt like were important to keep in graphical form, and felt like as much as possible to provide kind of a comparison for folks. They could see, this is how Orono stacks up against either the state or the region with these elements. So that's why they were chosen. But also tried to put around them, some kind of, summary information to go along with. If charts aren't your thing, you could just read the other facts that are beside it. Is there anything specific other than is it the content or the format, Noah, or?
I don't know, I guess I was more thinking again from like the marketing perspective is like, what, and I think that's not the right perspective perhaps of like what we're trying to like convey with those, you know what I mean? And so, yeah. I think that-
Do you
So-
mean achievement scores, or do you mean representing it in a graph? I'm just trying to understand.
Well, like what about having all the grade level achievement scores broken down is helping us in a marketing sense, and like taking up, I mean, it's a lot of space to take up with a lot of data, and I mean, with any graph, it's like, you wanna know, like, what is the trend, what is the story you're trying to tell? And I'm just, it doesn't hit me the story right away, so maybe I just don't.
Yeah, I think the story of that page is our students exceed, state levels of performance, for both content areas. In all but one grade where we meet it. And I think that's important to to a lot of folks that are looking at, markers of success. And we talked about how to best represent this data, whether we do it grade by grade, whether we do it by district, and it just, I don't know, it felt like we were combining too much data to just give and there's really not a district aggregate that's reported that felt like we would be reporting something in a really sound way. Especially when you want to have that comparative data with the state.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a graph that a lot of people are going to want to see. So I think it's important to include. I know what Noah's saying. It's not necessarily maybe our main message that we've been developing, but I think this is information the community needs to know.
And I mean, I guess on the second page of graphs, I think the staff level is important to people. They want to know that, we have qualified, experienced people in classrooms and in our schools. The top one, I think, is trying to speak to, we invest in our schools. Schools are a priority in this community. It's kind of the story that's trying to convey. Whether or not it does that, I guess you can help me know if that's, what people will take away from that.
I think the top one also communicates to taxpayers that I think most of our taxpayers want to be at the top, but not crazy. And I think that's exactly what that graph says.
Yeah, we're not so out of line with, other districts.
Just a nitpick, but on the previous page, the state is in white and Orono is in red, but the next page, the state is in black. I don't know if that's worth fixing or not, but
I think it is.
I guess, do we need all the colors there? Or are those actually the school colors of the school?
Yes. In the expenditure graph, yeah.
Okay.
But we really would like eyes, if you can take, if you need to take it and scan it back to us. Like if you can just help us find the things we're not seeing, that would be helpful. But any other kind of big picture wonderings, content wonderings?
Just in terms of like, I'm going to like looking at images and stuff. Is there a big pool of images you're pulling from, or like, if some of these like could think about replacing here and there, and like, is there
There's not a big pool.
okay.
We've tried to have a nice balance of, kids doing lots of different things and a couple staff pictures. So, and we've had to take some out for, the approval reasons that, we needed to make sure that everyone was allowed to be in here. So, I mean, we don't have a great
bench.
Yeah,
I guess that's kind of what I was wondering, yeah, because it feels like there could be a little more.
a little more what?
Well, depth and some of the big, yeah, I mean, I can imagine with the larger pool to pull
Yeah.
from, we could do some different things, and I just am wondering.
There's something specific that you say, oh, this is missing. If you could let us know what that is, and we can see if we can find something and send out a call for if anyone has a picture of that.
Yeah.
So if there's something specific that this happens at the school and I don't see this represented, that would be helpful to hear.
Okay, yeah.
Because maybe we could ask and someone could find one of those pictures.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't wanna nitpick everything here, but yeah, I think that there may be some elements like that, and maybe some of these, like, we could find the same thing, but a little bit more, you know what I mean? But-
Yeah, I just need specifics, because again,
Yeah,
Yeah,
So Noah, could I ask you to just send an email? I mean, well, there's still time, so just send
Yeah,
an email with
so-
specifics.
Yeah, or maybe,
Yeah.
after the.
Yeah, tomorrow or something. Are we good to move on?
yep, I'm good.
All right. Class sizes, got an update for that.
Yes. So you have a chart in the folder, but also I think it's in your, on your hard copy on your table. Of our data as of last Friday, that's now just a little bit outdated already. We've had a flurry of enrollment today, so it seems when I say a flurry, I think 2 or 4. I've heard 4.
I think we're up to 336 with a part-time enrollment.
Yeah, so ASA is really the place to be right now.
Yes,
Um,
this is booming.
Yeah, when you look at, when you consider, you know, our previous board workshop conversation about, you know, marketing and enrollment.
We might want to slow it down.
Yeah, resident commission in K through 8 is really, really strong and growing. When you look at, for example, the 7th grade group, that's at 43. All the way through elementary school, they were in the 30s. And we're in like the mid-30s at one point, and that's when we went to the 2 classes in that grade, and they kept 2 classes all the way up through really last year. But that group is growing. You know, ASA at every level has grown over our you know, projections certainly, but also since we gave this update last a month ago. So you can see where we stand across all grades and how the average class sizes go. There's also, you know, as typical, a lot of variation in special education numbers per grade. That, you know, doesn't correlate necessarily. Like if you look at 2nd and 3rd, their overall enrollment's very similar, but their special education enrollment is very different. So, and then 4th grade is, you know, so it's just like a roller coaster with that. I don't think at this point there are any concerns around staffing where we need to, you know, add staff at this point. I think we were feeling like we have the right staff in place in those grades for K through 8. I think what we see in the high school is you know, what we expected, but a little better than expected. I think I didn't bring that with me tonight, but the projection was somewhere in the upper 60s when we were planning budget for this incoming 9th grade class. And it's a little higher than expected. And you can see, you know, even though that 9th grade class is, you know, 9 smaller than 10th and 11th grade, their special education numbers are large. So we have a large percentage of that freshman class who are receiving some kind of service. And so, you know, that kind of is indicative of some needs that Lisa's seeing. I don't know what you're saying, Meredith. I see a comment.
You said that
7
it's
higher
7.
than predicted. Okay, thank you. The class sizes at the high school, you can see at the high school, we just organize it a little differently just because it's organized differently. You can see the class size ranges in terms of how many sections are in those size ranges of less than 10 or greater than 10, no, less than 10, sorry, 37, 10 to 19, 78, and etc. I assume the 2 that are 30 plus are music classes. And then you can see the department, each department's average class size, largest and smallest, and the number of classes. And, you know, there's certainly some, you know, a trend that you see a pretty strong trend in that 13 to 15 range, but then you have some outliers from that. in the average numbers there. But I look back at last year's data, and there were a couple places that were a little higher last year at this time for average size, but mostly it's either pretty consistent or a little smaller than last year at this time. In terms of the averages. And then on the back, it's not new, it just gives like a one-pager overview of all the special ed numbers together and over time. And I found it interesting that we're kind of back down a little, just below where we were in 22-23. But when you consider, our enrollment as a district is down about 40 students, that makes sense, right? So, want to invite you to ask questions. I know, we have our administrators can answer any questions, in particular. I know the high school data is kind of dense. If you have questions, Meredith can help answer that. Any questions, comments, feedback?
I had just one comment, and it's not going to affect this year, but I think for the most part, the health and PE teaching staff are the same. And those class sizes, especially as we've been pushing up the health curriculum and dealing with more sensitive topics, that's a large size to be dealing with some of those conversations, and strikes me that the actual PE classes could be a little bigger. Just wondering if that's a balance we don't want to think about for next year.
No,
Yeah,
that
I mean,
absolutely.
go ahead.
And I think that, part of it is that we have folks mostly taking health because it's required. And then we have folks who take PE because it's required, but then we also have like the superstar overachiever PE folks who will take a PE class every single semester. And so I think that is going to be there are other departments where we will indicate that, students have to be in a certain grade level in order to take a class, or students at a grade level get priority. But that is that's definitely a conversation, because that is not, that idea of keeping those health classes intimately sized in order to facilitate those conversations. That is not something that we had talked about yet. So thank you for that.
But, I think, when you look at the largest class size of P is 24, but the average being 14.9, there's room for that average to certainly be higher. Questions, comments? I think one thing that stands out to me, and I don't think it was terribly different last year, maybe had a couple of less, was the number of sections less than 10 at 37. That's a high number that, is going up compared to last year. And when you look at, the smallest class sizes, I think across departments, there are more departments that have single digit classes than I recall in the past. Whereas before, I think, there were maybe, I don't know, I'm just guessing, half of the departments maybe had a single digit class and the other half didn't. So I don't know what's driving that, if it's more diversity of offerings that's driving that, or if it's lower enrollment, or if it's both of those things.
So I dug into that segment of classes in particular, and can share some more information based on what I learned. The big picture is that the primary driver for the building of our schedule is student choice, right? And students have a wide range of classes from which they get to choose, especially given the size of our faculty. There really is nowhere that offers the range of things that we do for the number of faculty that we have. And what that means is that there is this, really kind of delicate assembly of offerings that happens each spring based on what students select. And then the overall master schedule is built in order to facilitate all of those students getting all the things that they want in a way that is, really a feat. Troy and Holly spend hours and hours and hours around the guidance conference table, figuring out, okay, if we put this class, this singleton class here, who's going to be kept out of it, who wants to get into it. And then if somebody's kept out, then the class is moved. And what that means is that we don't have the luxury that some schools have of saying, well, we're going to run a section of, junior English every block, and we're going to run a section of senior English every block. Instead, it becomes this mosaic that sometimes creates voids of availability. And so when I broke down the number of classes that had fewer than 10 students, one of the things that I learned was that there are some sections that are not singletons, but that students just couldn't access in that block because of whatever was happening elsewhere in the building, right? So for example, we have one section of earth and physical science that is very small. And it would be great to be able to move some students from the larger sections into that section. But after, looking at ways to do that, Troy and Holly discovered that it just because of how those other kids' schedules are, that wasn't possible. So we had six of those 37 sections are a result of circumstance and scheduling. A question that has been asked previously is, what percentage of our small classes are serving advanced learners or learners who are opting into advanced classes, so honors and AP level. Of the 37 classes, 10 of those classes are either honors or AP classes. So I didn't calculate 27%. 27% of those under 10 classes are honors or AP. Some of those are new classes, like advanced choir is an audition based performing arts class that students have to, audition into. Students who are in that class are also in choir. So that is, a student who is putting into their schedule 2 performing arts classes. AP research is a class that falls into that category. That is, our extension of AP seminar. Our AP seminar enrollment this semester is 18. So we have, some students who choose to continue on in that sequence and others who don't. One of those classes is our advanced writing seminar, which is where writing center tutors are trained. So that being a class that is, serves a pretty niche population. There are 2 departments that have a high percentage of small classes. And those 2 departments are performing arts and world language. I was speaking with a world language department chair, and she identified that once upon a time, and I don't know exactly when this was, but at some point during her tenure at OHS, 80% of OHS students enrolled in world language classes. At this point, 30% of students enrolled in world language classes. And, that being something that, even with those small class sizes, we have a couple of sections that are combined classes where students from different levels of the same language are taking class at the same time in order to have a critical mass of students in the room. And, our 2 largest classes are performing arts classes, are choir and band. And, choir in particular is a growing program here. We have, a lot of students who are doing some really incredible work in a way that has diversified our course offerings in that realm. Other than those 2 classes, all of the classes in performing arts are under 10 students. And in some ways, this feels to me like an identification of the challenge that comes when we have a wide range of diverse programming that is really about students opting in, right? Because both of those classes are essentially elective driven, right? Students are choosing to take them out of interest versus out of requirement. Students can meet the performing arts, I mean, the arts requirement by doing performing arts, but, you know, some students will choose visual arts classes instead. And so we, you know, I had a conversation today with one of the world language teachers about, you know, what this means for us as a district. I read an article a couple weeks ago that was about the impact of AI on world language learning and how, you know, that is something that is having an impact. You know, at the same time, our students who are learning world languages at Orono High School are graduating with a capacity to be fully communicative in the language of instruction, which is not something that happens in every high school. A lot of high school students will learn to read and write, but are uncomfortable listening and uncomfortable speaking. It is such a joy to walk into you know, an upper level French or Spanish class and hear the words flying around the room. And, you know, so that is an area where we have, you know, small classes, and those small classes are really, really important to the students who are taking them. You know, and in our conversation about branding today, that is something that I was kind of a touchstone for me because of how the, you know, the attention to the individual and the meeting the needs of the individual is a huge part of how our class size matrix unfolds. We have a solid participation in early college, and so I dug into the numbers on that as well to see what the rate of early college enrollment is for us. And Katie Quirk put together that information over the last 4 semesters, including summer. We have an average of 22 students taking a class each semester. That doesn't include this fall because she based this on completion numbers. So those are classes completed by students. The high was in the fall of 2023, we had 32 students. And a low was the summer of 23, we had 15 students. But on average, based on the student populations for the corresponding semesters, we had 6% of students taking early college classes. At a rate of an average of 28 classes a semester. So some students taking more than one, but mostly students all taking one class. And so what that illustrates, you know, for me is that students who want to access that and who want that to be part of their programming are doing so, but not at a rate that from my perspective, is having a significant impact on our class size numbers. We do have some cases in which enrollment is higher in the spring than it lands in the fall. Students opting into classes, and this is something that happens more for advanced level classes, saying that they want to take those classes, but then when the fall comes, we will see a higher movement rate out of those classes than in non-advanced classes. And that isn't across the board, but it is a trend in some areas.
Thank you for that information. That's helpful.
I mean, like you say, it's always going to be an ongoing balance, right? On the plus side is student choice and student option, and this district certainly has always supported teaching not just first and second year Spanish or French, but upper level classes. And but on the other, yeah, it's a question of balance, right? Some of the social studies and English classes, I think it's not as clear to me that that the student needs couldn't be met in slightly more aggregated classes, but I you know, I also don't know the details, so I could be wrong about that, but we'll just always have to keep watching that balance because the cost implications are real too.
Something that was mentioned in a number of conversations, because I asked department heads for feedback about, you know, their department's observations about class size. And something that was talked about in a number of cases was the fact that we are over 50% IEP in 504. And you know, we've had conversations about this just the other day with Lisa, talking about whether this is this us or is this the region? You know, and folks are observing that it is a regional issue. But when we have, some of those needs and some of those behaviors in a class, it can get really challenging. And one of the conversations that we had at the beginning of this year, so the social studies class that is listed as 3 students, that is an AP class that had 3 times that number of students who wanted to take it. And so it was created as a section of 9. And those students were all enrolled until they kind of dropped one by one in the first few days of school. And once we landed at that number, Shauna and I talked about, whether the class should continue or whether it'd be better to dissolve it and have another section of World Civ to meet the needs of those students, where we, much higher percentage of IEPs and 504 needs in those World Civ classes. And ultimately, because of the way the schedule was built, we couldn't have moved those World Civ students into this block. And so that is, one of the challenges that we have when, a class depletes to that level. Because of the way our schedule is built, it really is not a matter of just creating another section. Those are decisions that we need to make in the spring. And so, I think that as we approach registration this year, that will be, one of the conversations that we have in terms of, creating an ability to meet need where it is necessary, and in a way that employing some strategies to limit the number of students who move out of those small sections.
Thank you. Other thoughts or comments? We can go ahead and move on then. Appreciate that this takes a lot of work, and I appreciate that there's already been a lot of reflection in the buildings before it ever got here. Next up, we have health curriculum.
The health curriculum has, we've been working on it for some time. I feel like, more 2 years.
November of 22 is when we started.
Yeah, almost
Yeah.
2 years we've been working on health curriculum. And we bring it tonight. We, I think last spring realized we needed to spend more time on it. We were hoping to bring it last spring, but spent more time to, really incorporate some of the feedback we heard and to, incorporate some pieces that we, went back and took a closer look at. And so Susan has shared the documents, and I'll just turn it over to Susan to kind of give a big picture, scoping and any questions. We do have an action item later on the agenda for you to consider approval.
Yeah, so I was just wanting to spend a few minutes, starting by thanking the teachers and folks that worked on this, and Meredith Diamond as well. Really took an approach of what do our kids need in health these days, and then from that, working to make sure we had something comprehensive from kindergarten all the way up through high school and the higher grades in high school. And biggest change was adding a course, so that the high school graduation credit is, credit requirement now is 2 half credits of health. And that I think really has given us time to address what kids need in this day and age, and appreciate the work that folks have done in thinking about that, and also making sure that they've received training so that they feel comfortable with teaching those topics. And sometimes that's maybe having Officer Patterson come in to do something, or we have a Be Wise, Be Safe trainer coming in November to make sure that our high school health teachers are trained in that sexual education when it comes to dating and potential violence and that piece of it as well. So basically what you have in front of you as board members are 2 fairly lengthy documents. One would be the public facing document that is the units of study, but the essential questions, the priority standards and the ICANN statements, hopefully in language that, literate adults can understand, and that we can translate so that kids can understand what they're learning about and why as well. And then the other document is a more comprehensive curriculum map for each grade level, really breaking down and looking at what resources teachers can be using, as well as assessments teachers would be using, and those technology pieces, and the really important parts of how do we work to be culturally inclusive and representative in our work as well. So I think the process worked well in that we started with what we know about kids, looked at national standards and worked from there. And then after the teachers took a look at it, put it out to stakeholders through survey and took that information back to curriculum committee and then said, okay, yeah, we do need to add some more here to certain topics, particularly 5th grade and up in sex ed. And then that's where we're bringing it back to you tonight, is the place that we feel really does represent our students' needs, the state national standards, and what our community feels is important too.
I just want to pause and say to the students, it's past 8. If you need to go for the night, feel free to. So I guess at this point, Susan, would we just invite questions, comments, any discussion point?
Thought it was good. One question I did have though, and in some spots, we use the term STI, sexually transmitted infection, and in some places we use STD. I didn't know if that was, I don't know enough to know if that is intentional or not
It
intentional.
was not intentional. I
Okay.
think the, so I can go back and do
Okay.
a find replace kind of thing too. STIs is what, I've been educated is more contemporary. And so I'll take a look for that. Thank you for noticing that.
Yeah.
Close read, Derek. Nice job.
You can go.
I was
Our
like,
board members do their homework.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. Any other wonders?
other than that, I thought it was great. That was good.
I'm really proud of this community for supporting this type of health education for our kids. I think it's what they need, and yeah, I'm proud.
Certainly more comprehensive than what I recall getting.
And more comprehensive than what's currently offered in a lot of communities.
That's good.
Yeah. And states, some states, obviously.
Yeah, that's true.
But I mean, as Susan said, this is really what our kids need, right? So I don't know how it happened, but there's been a gradual, it's even happened in this district, but it's certainly happened nationally, this diminishment of what's being taught for the last 20 or 30 years. And, but kids haven't, well, if kids haven't changed, they still need this stuff. So I think it's fantastic. And yeah, I mean, you said you were proud of the community, but I'm also, Susan, I'm proud of the process that this went through. You know, it did take a lot longer than we thought it was going to, but I think there are a few pieces of curricula in the entire country that have had as much scrutiny and feedback as this has had. So it really is a consensus at this point. We don't need to belabor it. If other people don't have comments and think they're ready to vote, we can move on with the agenda. Okay, next up are staff nominations. We removed the hiring recommendations, so we just have the co-curriculars. I would make a motion to approve the slate of co-curriculars as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
And just to be clear, that's Stacy Doherty, Literary Magazine, Laura Cavazos, ASA Governance, Tina Thibodeau, Ed Tech Recertification, and Holly Gunn, 1/2 Special Olympics. Excuse me, any discussion or questions? We'll go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye, carries 5-0. Next up, we move into policies. We saw this 2 weeks ago, but it's back for second read since it was a brand new policy. This is JIE for pregnant students. As I mentioned, it's It's basically the default Drummond and Woodsum text that's coming out of the new Title IX revisions. This is why we're adding the policy, is because Title IX now requires it. And, the feedback I had is that this is already what we have in practice. It's attempting to maximize educational opportunities for pregnant students and flexibility. So I would make a motion to approve policy JIE. Is there a second?
A second.
Any discussion or questions? Go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. Next up, we have the health. I would make a motion to adopt the health curriculum as presented. Is there a second?
Second.
I would just further comment that curriculum are always a work in progress. So this one has a lot of work, but it's definitely ready to move forward, in my opinion. Any other comments? Are we ready to vote? Go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
I also vote aye. That passes 5-0. Thank you, Susan. I know you did a lot of lifting on that.
Thank you all.
And
Thank you.
next up, we have the school nurse subrate. Meredith?
Yes, Lisa brought this to me as we are preparing an ad to go out for this. We haven't re-examined our nurse subrate in, the last time we did it was 2020. And we really need to make an adjustment to be more competitive if we're going to get candidates for this. We did a survey of where districts are on this in the region, which is what we did when we adjusted it before. So currently our nurse subrate is $150 per day for a 1-day sub. Compared to our like if you're a non-certified sub, you get 105 per day. If you're a certified hold a teacher certification, you get $120 per day. And then if you get to long-term sub status for a teaching role or anything in that realm, you get 241 and some change, 76 per day. It goes to a long-term sub rate. So what I'm proposing is a change to the daily sub rate for the nurse to $200. And then if we have, in this case, hopefully we'll have a candidate who stays with us for gets to long-term sub rate, they would just go to what we already have as a long-term sub rate, which is $241 a day. But to be competitive, we really do need to make that adjustment. So that's the recommendation, $200 for the daily sub rate for nurse. And this is for an RN. It requires an RN.
Okay, I would make a motion to change the daily sub rate for the nurse to $200 a day. Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? Go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Aye.
Mark?
Aye.
Also vote aye. Carries 5-0.
Thank you.
Meredith, does that would increase after a certain amount, or is it?
Yeah, let's talk.
Next up, subcommittee reports, policy subcommittee. This meeting, I guess would be next week. Don't have an agenda, but as you heard, the legislature was, at least on the policy front, fairly nice to us. So we I think, just have some cleaning up. Might actually be a slow year on the policy subcommittee. Anything from UTC?
Yeah, warrants are being delivered to towns and notices of public hearing are being posted. I've posted it for Orono and BZ. October 15th we're gonna have a public hearing at UTC. and members of the fiscal committee there, which I happen to be on, will sit around, presumably answer questions of the people who come. That's for that referendum that's gonna be on the November 5th ballot. Otherwise, no new news.
Great, thanks. Curriculum Subcommittee. I think we
We
did
meet,
meet, but
Have we met and then we meet again on October 10th?
okay. Wellness Committee, anything, Noah?
No, we're gonna meet next week, but you guys strategic plan, so we're gonna meet October 24th, I think is the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay, and speaking of which, the strategic plan leadership meeting is, I believe, this Thursday. First one of those, so we'll get that kicking.
Yep, that's
Uh,
Thursday at 3:30, and we're gonna have it in the library here. I need to let the team know.
Okay, any other business? Any requests for future agenda items? Any public comment? Seeing none, our next meeting is October 8th at 6 o'clock in the library and on Zoom. Are there any requests for information and follow-up? I would motion to adjourn. Is there a second?
Second.
Go ahead and vote. Jake,
Aye.
Kevin,
Aye.
Noah,
Hi.
Mark.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Carries 5-0. We're adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Fran?
Did you get rid of that?
Good catch.
Like, just show you some of the like a nitpicky thing, just in person or?
You probably show me.
Okay.
I mean, you can show me, but Rachel's the one that needs.
Okay, yeah, 'cause it's hard to like describe, and then this one. Yeah. And is there another company that give you the one with the?
Yeah, there's an extra over there on the table.
I can leave.
There may be some of those that are elementary.
There's some that I so, yeah, they would the last one, that's blurry, but.
I'm putting it off. And if you go to my quizzes like earlier or something.
It's not my original graphic, and so I would like to have a copy, it goes out. It's really
Yeah.
sad.
I wasn't around there, but I never worked on it. And it
There you go. I'm coming home right now.
Yeah, I was thinking about.
I do,
I'll be home in 5 minutes, okay?
So I'm not even.
But yeah, there was something about the, that she was saying.
Like the one of the thing with the office, and she gave me her card. She was like, "You remember
Yes, in that morning.
But I had that. It's all my friends. Well, yeah, well, it's like all like the directors and that, team, but like all of.
It's gonna repeat. Maybe just get another. I know, yeah, yes. Oh, yeah.
This is it. That's it.
Yeah, I know. I don't know. Yeah.
Life school surprises.
I know when I put make things, it's like. Anyway, I think.
Have a good one.
Good night.
Your life changing.
It's just like a lot of. Thank you for the treat.
Yeah. Absolutely. Have a good one, Kevin.
Yeah, so maybe.
Thank you, Noah.
Yeah.
What, you look confused, Rachel.
Oh, it's not letting me, close the meeting.
That's weird.
Yeah.
Now, I assigned you